Welcome to Movies Are Life. I'm your host, Nathan Chandler. Grab your hair gel and grab your favorite Franks and Beans because we are discussing the gross out comedy There's Something About Mary, which falls at number 28 on the 50 best rom-coms list. I'm excited to welcome in my brother-in-law and private investigator for hire, Jeff Graham. How are you doing?
Doing well, Nathan. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming in to talk about this movie because even when I asked you, you texted me, and not that we will go on like a profanity laced description and about the scenes about this movie, but you're like, I don't know how we talk about this movie without like, there's a lot of areas that are kind of a little sensitive and but so that's a fair warning. I mean, it's kind of like, if you're diving into a podcast about There's Something About Mary, I think at this point in life you kind of know what it's about. So anyway, so we may be talking about some subject matters that's a little bit more mature than your usual PG-13 type of romantic comedy. So anyway, anyway, in a weird way, I'm like, oh, this is kind of I mean, at least I feel like I know you well enough that this movie might be a little easier to talk to you about than maybe some other people I've brought in before. So definitely. All right. So let's brush up on our zipper etiquette and dive into the world of Ted, Mary, and a whole lot of cringeworthy hilarity.
It was definitely love.
Not Mary again.
I mean, crushes don't last for 13 years, right?
He couldn't help it.
Hi, it's Ted.
I haven't seen you since
Senior prom.
How's everything?
Oh, that's fine.
Strong like bull.
And he couldn't explain it.
You asked me to follow around your girl, and I did. And then the truth is, I started to like her.
Because There's Something About Mary.
There's Something About Mary is a 1998 American romantic comedy directed by the Farrelly brothers, Peter and Bobby, who co-wrote it with Ed Decter and John J. Strauss. The film features Cameron Diaz as the title character, while Ben Stiller, Matt Dillon, Lee Evans, and Chris Elliott all play men who are in love with Mary and vying for her affection. There's Something About Mary was released theatrically on July 15th, 1998 by 20th Century Fox. It received generally positive reviews from critics who praised its humor and Diaz's performance. The film became a major box office success, grossing over $369 million worldwide against its $23 million budget, becoming the fourth highest grossing film of the year. It is placed 27th in the AFI's 100 Years, 100 Laughs, America's Funniest Movies list. And in 2000, readers of Total Film magazine voted There's Something About Mary the fourth greatest comedy film of all time. There was other accolades. There's lots of movie lists as you can guess, and this movie always makes an appearance. I'm pretty sure. So I was in the middle of high school when this movie was released. It was 1998, so sophomore, junior year, somewhere in there. And I want to tell a funny story about the first time I saw it. But first, did you see this movie when it originally came out?
I did. I remember seeing it in 98, but I don't remember the situation around it. But yeah, go ahead.
Oh, no. Well, you want to hear mine?
Yeah.
You're a little bit older than me. So I've talked about it in the podcast before. Like it's almost, I would say, a little strange I love movies so much because I just grew up in a household where I just didn't watch R-rated movies. So I didn't see this movie in the theater. I would have, Jeff, you know me, I'm a rule follower. So it probably doesn't surprise you that I would, even though I was probably dying to see this movie, I was even terrified with the thought of maybe who would see me going into this movie theater. So I know so me and some friends rented it, and it was at one of my friend's house. And so her family was gone. So we were watching this movie, and of course I was enjoying it, thinking it was hilarious and all that kind of stuff. And then, of course, there's a lot of memorable scenes in this movie, but the infamous hair gel scene came on, and I saw the lights of her parents' car pulling into the driveway, and I was just immediately just like turning red, like, oh my gosh, like, and I don't think there was even a discussion of like, like, yeah, let's watch this movie before they get home or anything like that. But I just kind of assumed, oh great. And so I won't call out who the parents are. I doubt they would ever listen to this. But anyway, so I just remember that scene's going on, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And the mother walks in on my friend, and she stops and she goes, "Oh, this is my favorite part." So the relief of me was like, "Oh, okay." So anyway, and so yeah, Whitney, my wife, your sister, she talks about how she saw this when it came out and probably watched it with your folks or you or something. And I'm like, I can't even watch this movie with my parents now.
No, I would prefer not to. Yeah. You kind of have to rank the top. I mean, I was thinking about this movie and thinking, I mean, first off, it's so smart. But as you're going through it, you definitely have to rank like your top 3 grossest things. And for me, it was Woogie's blisters and his face,
his love
breaking
blisters,
out, the hives, yes, and the eye one. It was just like that was the worst for me. What were your top 3?
Oh, my top 3 gross out.
What's the
moment?
grossest to you? Yeah.
Oh, the grossest. Okay, I wouldn't say this is the grossest but when Magda is just basically making out with her dog,
yes,
Puffy.
That was definitely in my top 3.
Oh, Puffer. I'm sorry, I said Puffy. Yeah, that's definitely a moment. I actually have a pretty dark sense of humor, so there's not too much that just absolutely grosses me out. Man, you put me on the spot. I wasn't expecting you to ask me the questions.
Oh, sorry.
I mean, the hair gel scene was definitely shocking. I mean, there's always been gross out comedies even before this movie, but I mean, I don't know enough movie history, nor would I make a list of where.
I didn't think that was. I mean, that's not the grossest, but the grossest was the Frankenbeans. I mean, definitely my third grossest thing was like just seeing the fact that they showed it.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, and especially since even if you got a hint, if you hadn't seen this movie and you kind of heard of the scene, so like, I mean, I think probably at the time I even knew this scene was coming up, but like, I think the shock of when it does do that quick cut to like, you don't expect, a lot of Saturday Night Live, right? Humor. And I almost see that whole scene, which sets up the whole movie really well, but it almost feels like a Saturday Night Live scene. Just it does feel very staged. Like it doesn't feel like you're in a real house. It really does seem like a sketch you would, cut in. And Saturday Night Live would, I think, have similar like the sketches like this maybe, but you would never like see that. And when it makes that jump cut, you're like, oh, we're in a whole different film here. So
I got it stuck.
You got what stuck?
It.
Oh! Well, listen, it's not the end of the world. These kind of things happen. Let's have a look at it. Oh, for God, never say.
Oh, and you're probably thinking of the scene too where Matt Dillon's character is spying on Mary with the binoculars and thinking he's going to get a little peep show and get something different.
gets Magda's 3 boom. Yeah.
Yeah. So was this a movie? Have you seen it a lot, or had it been a while since you've seen it?
The first time I watched it, I don't think I put together that Woogie was the high school friend. So rewatching it recently a couple of times, and yeah, definitely, it's just so smart and layered how they all knew each other and how they were all chasing Mary around. It comes together so well at the end. So.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, and I remember that actually being one of the things I remember for the movie is that it actually really plays out this kind of mystery. I was gonna ask you if you were kind of shocked by some of the reveals of it, and I remember watching it for the first time, and it seems, even though it might seem obvious now, because of all the clues that's laid out, but it really does, like you talked about. I think it does a brilliant job of not being so like in your face about it. I think they do it really nice of his character. And then I even like at the end where he's even like, Woogie, Woganesky, kind of like, come on, Ted.
Duh. I've been setting you up this whole time. Of course you need to find Mary.
Yeah. But the fact that Chris Elliott's character, is that Woogie, infamous Woogie they always talk about. I thought it was, he's like, you knew that we lived just a couple miles down the road from you. I think that's really funny. So Cameron Diaz is Mary. A lot of the research I was reading about this, and at the time, she got a lot of praise for this role. Do you like her in this movie?
Yeah, definitely. She was great at the time. She was at the peak of her career, and she played it effortlessly. It seems like that's who she probably really was at that time. The golfer, the surfer, the very energetic and very outgoing. I liked her for the role. My favorite stalker though was Tucker.
What was your favorite?
He was so good. I mean, he was the one that took me the longest to put together that he's Norm the pizza guy. I mean, it's just like his role when he bends down to get those keys is just so pathetic, and he's doing the front and back, and the athletic humor there was great.
Yeah. So Lee Evans, he's an actor, but also kind of a famous stand-up comedian from England. So he's actually British, but for this movie, he really made his accent like over the top. So as to if you're someone from England, you're watching him going like, this is horrific, but he did that on purpose, for the character of Norm, who like Norm wouldn't know really the correct dialect to speak.
Yeah.
Did you like Ben Stiller in this role as Ted?
I mean, yeah, absolutely. I read about some of the other people that they were going to cast for it, and I think he definitely ended up being the best one. I can't imagine Jon Stewart playing it.
Right. I mean, and he's played very similar roles like this, where kind of basically the ultimate bad luck guy, but he does play it perfectly. Of like, it just he's not completely dumb, but he's kind of aloof. But also, you buy into him being like emotionally sensitive and really caring, but also, as we were just kind of talking about, like the fact that the Woogie thing goes over his head, it's kind of like, well, I see that about him, but yeah, he just plays it so well. And I think also well enough of like, I think if you actually looked at Ben Stiller, probably as him as a person, he's a really handsome guy, and but he can take this dip into just average Joe territory that especially playing off Cameron Diaz, I think is a good kind of juxtaposition between the two, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and for him it was kind of the same role he played in Along Came Polly.
Oh yeah.
Ho-hum, average Joe kind of guy.
Yeah. And so I like all his stumbling, and I don't think he's necessarily known for his physical humor, but he does he does a lot of, I mean, I know there's probably a lot of stunt work in this stuff, but he does the pratfalls and all the things really, really well in here.
Yeah, he does.
So,
he does. Yeah.
Even with I made a note, the beginning scene that we talked about, like the zipper, when he lets out that scream, that yelp, it's just pitch perfect. There's not many people that could do that. So
no, yeah. That was what a great scene.
Yeah. So the Farrelly brothers, I mean, they definitely were having a moment in the 90s. I mean, this movie is so 90s in a lot of ways. It's pushing the envelope for sure. But have you been a fan of theirs? Their other movies are Dumb and Dumber, Kingpin, Shallow Hal. I don't know if you saw a lot of those during the time.
I've seen most of them. Yeah, I am a fan of those without realizing they were all tied together. I didn't realize those were the same directors. So I like Shallow Hal. That was another good one. Yeah.
Yeah, they kind of made this niche for themselves of this kind of gross out humor, but I wouldn't say there's almost, it might be too much, giving them too much credit to say that they had some intellect behind their stuff. The Dumb and Dumber, I mean, it's in the title, right, of what to expect from that movie. But they started to become like, especially with this movie, but Shallow Hal, they started kind of having like kind of almost like a little message in their movies. But some of their newer stuff I haven't seen, like The Heartbreak Kid, which stars Ben Stiller as well, or Hall Pass, and they did the remake of the Three Stooges, which was panned. But Peter Farrelly, he got a lot of attention because he was the director of the movie Green Book that won Best Picture that year. Did you ever see that movie?
Green Book, yes,
Yes.
that was a real good one. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so I think they kind of started maybe do a little bit more serious serious work and stuff, but they kind of reading about them, and I kind of knew this about them, but they've actually received awards for their work with disabled communities and bringing light to that and giving actors a chance. And so I don't know if that makes it okay for some of the jokes that are in this movie.
Warren, was he that actor is not really.
No, yeah, his name, the actor, no, the actor's name is W. Earl Brown, and he played. He probably has a recognizable face if you looked at other stuff, but he was in Deadwood for like as a kind of a supporting character in that show, but he's been around for a long time, and so I don't think this is a podcast to dissect really necessarily like how well he was to, that played, someone with a disability or not. But I mean, if you weren't familiar with his work, I don't know if you would know better, but I don't.
I would say that his role really tied together the film because that was the theme that kind of moved all the way through it.
Right.
And how the boyfriends related with him and so on and so forth.
Yeah, because there's definitely that moment where Ted has brought in Brett Favre, and he's brought him in when he leaves, and he takes the headphones off of Warren's ear. Like that's definitely especially with this movie, it kind of seems a little dumb, but that's a well written moment. Like they have used that as literally a punchline for a lot of the scenes in the movie, but it's something that builds up to a moment that actually pays off, that Warren sees Ted as like someone who's worthy to be in their circle, so to speak.
Now I have one, but is there anything that you don't get about the movie, like you just don't understand?
What do you mean by that?
Well, mine is Woogie's wife. How is she so devoted to him? How does she treat him so well? How does she just wait on whatever he wants? How does that character command that kind of loyalty from their wife? I mean, I do not understand that part of the movie. Do you get it? Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes, no, I see what you're saying. Yes, that for sure. And I will say, I mean, this is kind of like, is this a movie to really kind of nitpick really? But like, I just kept thinking, I was like, why does Ted have all this time to do this? Like, these are all grown adults, and apparently time is no object of them, and I know they talk about the hotel that he's staying in and stuff, but there's a lot of things, because especially the montage where they're doing all these dates and stuff, and from the montage, I mean, I did take close notes, but you would assume several days or so, and I was just like, what, how is this all happening? But, but they
make one reference to him working for a magazine company, like writing stupid stories for a magazine. And that's about the only thing they say about his job the whole time he's there.
Yeah. So, I do like, I know it's kind of funny, but I like how they kind of touch on, I mean, this movie almost doesn't hold up in a way now, because like you could almost probably hunt down anybody you went to high school with now because of the internet and social media and all this. I don't know if you would have to go hire a private investigator. Okay, when is it like too much?
When you get your teeth increased to the size that they look absolutely ridiculous, that's too much.
Yeah. Oh, it's fine. And what do you think about Matt Dillon in this movie? Speaking of, like, at the time when he did this role, he wasn't known for comedies, and I think he does a great job of playing this sleazeball here.
I thought he did a great job. He was very funny in the way he adjusted those chompers and stuff. Being a golfer, I had to read up, and they said that he was a terrible golfer on the show. So they his swing was pretty much real, and that Cameron Diaz was a better golf swinger than the one that they hired to be her stand-in. So that's
Oh
why
yeah.
she's actually in the swing
Yeah.
when she's doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't mean to gloss over Cameron Diaz earlier, but yeah, I've been harsh on her with certain movies. We covered The Holiday in which she's in, and I was kind of harsh on her performance, but she really, especially this time when this movie was made, is the perfect casting decision because she plays that just the girl next door, but also gorgeous, but it just she really was great in this role, and I think definitely one of her better films. But it definitely the girl that all the guys like would want to be with for sure. She might have actually set up an expectation for this movie was so popular. She might have set up an expectation too much of like guys expecting a girl to have a favorite football team, that sort of thing. But even though it had been a long time since I'd seen these movies, there were some quotes in here that I have said like for like all time since I've seen it. Is there any that like stuck out to you?
Man, so you put me on the spot. Yes, there were several. But yeah, what are some of your favorite? Read off a couple.
A line I've always said, and I think it's one of the best edits in cinema history. And I know that might be a really big statement, but I'm an editor. I've edited a long time, but the scene we talked about at the beginning with the zipper and everything, and the way they do the countdown that they're about to, pull the zipper down.
It's just like pulling off a Band-Aid. A 1 and 2 and
We got a bleeder!
We've got a bleeder.
We got a bleeder. Yeah.
So that line we have used all the time. Anytime we were playing sports or intramurals, somebody got hurt or something. That was the line we always said is we've got a bleeder.
Yep. That's a great one.
Yeah. I mean, have you seen my baseball? I mean, that's been used so many times. And then I mentioned it early, but I wondered if that time. Well, I thought it was the payoff of Brett Favre's appearance in this movie is amazing. It has to be one of the most memorable cameos, in film history. But definitely. I wonder if he read the script beforehand and knew that. How many times do you think he was called Favre after this movie?
I think often. I mean, I think people pronounce that often just to make fun of him. But that was definitely classic the way they left that in there.
Yeah. You mentioned Chris Elliott. I always liked the line, have you ever had a white head on your eyeball? And the scenes with the two, I mean, they're separate scenes, but with Puffer, one where, the Matt Dillon character is trying to revive him. and then when the scene where Puffer is, on speed, basically getting into the fight. I mean, I'm sure animal rights activists went crazy when they saw this movie.
They said they went through like 6 different Puffer dolls when they were filming it. But they destroyed 6 of them. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they did the smart thing of like Puffer at some point looks so fake, that you can kind of lean into the humor of it all, and so I think that's kind of what makes this movie work is that, they're definitely going for moments, but it's so over the top that, you can't, it's almost like if you get
you can't take it too seriously.
Yeah. If you get too offended, it's kind of like, okay, dude, look, that is clearly like a mannequin dog on his lap. You know what I mean?
But the editing was really good.
It was good.
It was really good when he came back to life at that last scene. He just seamlessly starts moving. It's like, wow, that just happened.
Movie musings.
At least from what Whitney's told me, you were a pretty cool guy in high school. So, but surely there was something embarrassing that happened to you in high school. I was wondering if any kind of moments come to mind.
Well, I was in the show choir, Nathan, so I was frequently embarrassing myself in a cummerbund and a bow tie, and I look back on that fondly. But if those were all pretty embarrassing moments, but they were fun.
Well, I don't know if I should share with you mine, but it kind of ties into this movie a little bit also because there was this girl in high school who was part of our youth group, and I won't mention her by name because she's actually she's not famous now, but she has a recognizable name. But she was a girl that, like, not just me, but all the guys had a crush on, but never like a legitimate, like, she was older, like nobody ever knew that would actually happen, but it was always like, oh, hey, this person's in the room. Do you know what I'm kind of talking about? That vibe or whatever. And so I remember in high school, we were at our youth minister's house, like a whole group. It was like a leadership group of some sort or whatever like that. And I don't know if it was like something we ate. I mean, usually at those things where you have pizza and all the, healthy, items at these type of things. But I remember we were all sitting just talking, and I don't know why. Why I couldn't control it, but I just let out the biggest fart in the room. And I mean, it was embarrassing, like just as a whole with everybody in there, but she was in that room also, and it was one of those, like, almost like centered on her reaction more than anything. But anyway, that was like one of the most like embarrassing things in high school. But it made me think of this movie because, she would be like a Mary type of person that just all the guys, especially the youth kids, they were infatuated with, because she was like could do no wrong. She was the Mary that was hanging out with the old people, and also was beautiful and could sing and all these things, so
yeah.
But well, I was wondering, you're someone who travels a lot. You've been to a lot of places, and I personally have never spent time in Miami. Have you ever been in Miami before?
Yeah, for the 2000 national championship game, OU versus Florida State.
You were at that game?
Yeah, I was at that game.
I had no idea. Well, I'm sure that was a fun time.
It was a real fun time.
So I'm sure you don't have too many bad things to say about Miami then.
No, I liked Miami. Yeah, it had a chill vibe that weekend for sure.
Yeah, I mean, like many people, I've been in Florida a lot in different, I've been in Tampa Bay. I've been in all big cities. I've never been in Miami. I've like connected through the airport one time, but I don't think that really counts. Okay, I'm setting you up a little bit with this question, but are you a Green Bay Packers fan?
Oh no, I'm a Dallas Cowboys fan. Yeah.
Despite going to a Packers game and wearing Packers gear.
Hey, it was cold, and they kind of dared me to wear them. So I said, "Hey, when in Rome, let's go be a Packers fan for a day." It was fun.
I'll still never forgive you for that. So I just,
a lot of Cowboy fans have said that. Yeah, I think I hurt some feelings that day, but yeah, it was nothing personal. It's just being a part of the day.
Did they play Dallas during that game, or was it somebody else?
No, that was Dallas. They were playing Dallas.
See, this makes it worse. I could almost forgive you if it was a different team, but because when you told me, I was like, oh man, I as a sports fan, as much as I despise Green Bay, I think it would be an amazing experience to see a game there. And so you told me you were going to that game to see Dallas, and then when you sent me a picture of yourself and all that Green Bay gear, it still makes me a little sick to my stomach, but that's okay.
Well, me too.
Rom-com rankings.
Before we jump into this, I will say, in a way, it had almost been so long since I'd seen this movie that I actually couldn't quite remember the ending. I knew Ted brought in Brett Favre, and honestly, I thought that's kind of how that ended with Mary with Brett Favre, because it's almost kind of like I always thought, like, why would she be with Ted?
How could she go Ted over Brett Favre? Yeah.
Yeah. So, and before I get your ranking, something I did want to touch on. This is also a movie I probably never would consider as a romantic comedy. Like, somebody tells me there's something about Mary, you probably think of the scenes that we had talked about, but really watching this movie, I do think it's a romantic comedy. But definitely. I don't know.
I mean, the good guy wins at the end. Yeah,
he does. So with all that said, what would you rank, 1 being the lowest, 5 being the highest, the chemistry between Ted and Mary here?
I mean, I'd say it's pretty high, 4.5. I mean, they're towards a 5. I think it's pretty real. It wasn't overdone to me by Ted, especially.
Yeah,
I think Mary had to carry him a little bit. Cameron Diaz.
Well, maybe it's because I've seen all these other movies, but I gave their chemistry 2 hearts. I mean, I think, I think as the actors, cast brilliantly. But I still don't really see Ted and Mary together really years after this. I mean, I know he's got he's in with Warren and everything like that, but I don't know. There's just, even when they have the grand big kiss at the end, and it just doesn't look right. So
I can see that.
Yeah, but I do appreciate that she as amazing as she is, that
he couldn't be Brett Favre. He couldn't be that lovable. He had to be somewhat unlovable, but she was going to find the true value in him.
Yeah,
because that was what was about Mary. I mean, that was what was about her.
Yeah. Well, this actually is making me seem really cynical, because it's just like, because how I feel in life, like, the true person is like what's in you, like inner beauty, not outer beauty. And here I am going, 2 hearts between these two, but whatever. So yeah, you just come in and give them a bit, big 4.5 hearts, but that's fine. So with this movie, of course, kind of a lot of these movies have been kind of weird with some of these categories, but the second category I have is the best friend aspect. So there's usually like a best friend component. And there's definitely best friends in this. I would say best friends with quotes, because we've talked a lot about Woogie and Chris Elliott's character. So I think you could consider him the best friend, but you could also consider Magda, I think Mary's friend. So this is kind of a little hard one to gauge. But I'm interested to how you would rank this category.
The best friend category overall. I mean, Ted didn't really have any friends.
No,
he thought Woogie was his friend, but Woogie was kind of setting him up. Woogie did give him pretty good advice. I thought Magda gave Mary pretty good advice, but not the best friend type that you want to see more of. She was kind of a really interesting character. So I'd say the best friend category, I give him about a 2.5, 3, about a 3.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you. Like, two very, very memorable characters, but the fact that Woogie is basically trying to undermine Ted, through the whole film. I mean, it's just, you have to take off some hearts just because of that, So, well, you probably didn't dive into the third category really, but the soundtrack of this movie. So a lot of romantic comedies have very memorable soundtracks, but I don't know if you can give a fair rating for this category or not.
Yeah, I mean, the music transitions in this thing are unique to say the least, and it's definitely not a genre that I'm going to pull up and listen to on a Saturday afternoon.
Yeah,
so I mean, I'd have to go for uniqueness of 4.5, but for how much I liked it, a 2.5.
Okay, good. I was like, what, 4.5? So
for uniqueness, I mean, for those transitions, I mean, they had the artist up there. They were always posed interesting. I mean, there's always something about them,
Yeah. Honestly, another thing I had completely forgotten about this movie was Jonathan Richman's the guy who's on guitar, who plays the opening song and weaves in. I was shocked the fact, like, we started the movie, Whitney was kind of in and out of sleep during this movie or whatever, but she was singing along to this opening of the song, and I had completely forgotten that this was a thing in this movie at all. But Jonathan Richman, I think he was the actor also. I would say stick to acting, but that's just me personally. But the soundtrack. I listened to the soundtrack. As I mentioned before, I'm a huge fan of Dumb and Dumber and Kingpin. I liked a lot of these movies and grew up with them. And these soundtracks, they always had one, they're like so 90s, but they were always, I feel like all their movies have these like quirky songs, and it's like they remind me of the movie, but they were not something I would ever listen to in my free time at all. But on the soundtrack, there's the Lemonheads. There's a good song on there, but I listened to the rest of them, and they're pretty they're pretty forgettable, except the ending song "Build Me Up Buttercup," which by the Foundations, which everybody just knows if you've been to a wedding almost, and that's a fun end credits scene, with them singing along to the song and everything like that. But like you, I ended up giving 2.5. It's not horrible, but it's definitely, if you played it, people would be like, "What? This is the weirdest soundtrack I've ever listened to." So, the fourth category I have is the chase scene or declaration of love. So, some of these movies have somebody running on foot, or there's a grand gesture. So I'm gonna go out while you're thinking about that. I gave it 5 hearts. I think the ending is just super memorable, and the fact that Ted, puts Mary above himself and brings Brett Favre back into the picture. And I was talking earlier about this whole like stalker mentality. That kind of made him like, hey, here's these guys over here, here's me. And then, he leaves it up to Mary to decide. And then she comes out and, chooses him. I thought it was an amazing scene.
Doesn't he even take himself out of the running? He says,
"Oh yeah,
I'm not interested. I'm out." Yeah.
And I do love the cat. As soon as he goes outside, he's just bawling, just blubbering like an idiot.
Got to be willing to walk away.
Yeah. So I gave it 5 hearts. I don't know what you would give it.
Oh yeah, definitely 5 hearts for that scene. I liked that one. Yep. Clean the pipes. Did you talk about that?
we can't.
Was that ever a practice for you? Is that something that you believed in? You couldn't go out with a loaded gun? Because that's a saying that I've used quite a bit.
Yeah. Well, I do think Woogie has a very solid argument. I will say that.
See, he got some good advice from Woogie, even though Woogie was setting him up, trying to get Mary back. Yeah.
You like what I did there? Solid argument.
Solid argument.
Yeah. I really don't think not just in dating. I think maybe in lots of things in life. I think it's very sound advice.
Is that air gel?
I don't know this for sure, but I'm sure like the Academy Awards that year, I'm sure they had a joke referencing this movie. Like they had to. It was just like a joke you saw everywhere. Like,
it was just so great. It was just the peacock hair just sticking straight up.
This one, I don't. I could probably guess what you'd give it, especially like as I gave you this list of movies, and I'm guessing you hadn't seen a lot of them. But the rewatchability, that's the last category in this. What would you give it?
I noticed something new in it every time I've seen it. And I've probably seen it 20 times. So I'd say definitely you can rewatch that movie and have a great time with it.
Yeah. I gave it 5 hearts. So many things I remember. Like I said, the lines are so memorable, and you probably end up saying, and I will say, Whitney would be mad at me if I didn't say this, but her favorite line, and it was something I didn't really remember much about the movie, but when he picks up the hitchhiker, she loves the whole bit about the 7-minute abs.
What about 6-minute abs?
No, not 6. I said 7. Nobody's coming up with 6. Who works out in 6 minutes? You won't even get your heart going, not even a mouse on a wheel.
Good point.
7's the key number here. Think about it. Right. 7 11s?
Yeah.
7 dwarfs? 7, man, that's the number.
And you just see the guy's face contort like it's just broken programming. What? That was greatness.
Well, I'm in the creative field, and I know you've done lots of pitches. You have lots of meetings and stuff. So you can almost kind of like, I'm just saying I can connect to the like great idea that you've had and you've thought about all the time, and you pitch it out to someone, and then someone just breaks it down immediately.
What if somebody does the 6-minute abs?
Yeah,
and he just contorts. His face just I backed that up to watch it again because it was such a good moment. He was great in the film.
Yeah.
The hitchhiker.
And I read he's his name's I recognize him before, but he's a good friend of the Fairley brothers, and they said even though that they had like a script for all his lines, he just like totally went off and did his own thing. So I think a lot of that ad lib, he just kind of did his own thing there. So you might recognize it. He's the cop in Dumb and Dumber that pulls him over for drinking and takes the drink out of their beer bottles, and it's the piss in the bottles. So he's got the face, like he's got the face twitch thing down, you know. So so is it a movie that holds up to you?
Yeah, definitely. Unrequited love. I mean, you can all connect with that right off the bat. So you're on the mission with this guy. But I mean, I did have the thought exactly like you said. What does he do for a living? How is he just following her around? You know, like he's just down in Miami for as long as it takes. You know, whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, it holds up. I think the message holds up, and it's funny as all get out in certain spots. I mean, laugh till you cry in a couple of spots.
Yeah. Do you think this is a movie that would even be attempted to be made today?
It'd be hard to be politically correct enough to have that movie today. Yeah, it would be tough. It'd be really tough.
I'd be interested to know if like a younger generation now, like, is this something like you think Tommy's seen before, or Maddie, or
definitely, yeah, they've definitely seen it because I know I watched it with Tommy when he got of age.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I wonder. I just kind of wonder if this, you know, like college students now, or you know, if this is even a movie that's on their radar. But I kind of think it is. Like the whole hair gel scene, that whole thing. Like, I mean, that's just something, you know, that's I think always going to be around. And if there's, you know, if there's an Academy Awards and they do a montage of, you know, comedies or anything like that, I think you're going to see this movie represented somehow.
Recommendations.
Well, is there anything that you are watching or listening to that you've been recommending to people?
I kind of liked Upload on Amazon Prime.
Yeah, that's a good show.
It had a lot of smart ideas and pretty funny characters. Pretty relatable to and terrifying all at once to think that you could still have to pay for stuff after being dead. You know, like a relative could be costing you that much from beyond the uploaded environment. So that's one thing. How about you?
Yeah. Before I tell you mine, to hit on that show, yes, we really liked that show a lot. And even though the first season, it came out a couple of years ago, and I mean, it's still a very new show, but I would say the things that it's already kind of predicted. I mean, virtual reality was certainly a thing when this TV show came out, but I think especially with the AI stuff now and all that, like chatter and stuff like this show was like really kind of already talking about beforehand.
Oh, that's AI. Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's AI. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So it's frightening, but yeah, people should check that out. Greg Daniels is the creator of that. He was one of the creators of the American version of The Office. So it's not two different things, but it's a little bit more serious, but it has some very funny moments in it. My recommendation, I don't know if this is a thing for you, Jeff, or not, that you were into this band, but I watched the documentary Wham on Netflix about the band Wham. So was that something you listened to when you were younger?
Loved it. Absolutely loved it. Yeah. It's great.
I think even if you weren't a fan of them, I think you, especially if you love music, I think this was an amazing documentary because the way it's their story, but the way they edit it, it's just from interviews from George Michael. And see, I'm already being bad about the whole purpose of this, the other guy, poor guy, Andrew, feel bad for that guy, but it's, you know, it's their story, but the whole movie is just audio interviews from them. So it's literally them telling you their story. So there's no other like really talking voices in there. And it goes from start to finish. It's a really tight movie. It's only 90 minutes. And it's just, I mean, I think a lot of their songs are like, oh yeah, I know that song. Oh yeah, I know that song. So one, like seeing what their influence was, but also it's a real interesting doc because they did break up, but like it was mutual. It was like it's just a neat story about music that doesn't have this like plane crash or drug
Drama at
overdose.
the end,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it's really like these two like super talented guys, get together, and they had these like dreams and these goals, and they worked together to achieve them. And when they got there, they were like, that was a lot of fun. We're going to go our separate ways, and they still supported each other. It's just a really, really neat story, and I think really shows really like how much of a talent George Michael was, and actually more so how Andrew knew that as well, and was just totally content to be like, "Yep, you." You run with it, basically, so it's a really neat story. And like I said, 90 minutes, so it's really quick. And I really, as an editor, I really liked how they told the story. So I think you'd like it. I think you should check it out. So
I will.
Yeah. Okay. So, next week we're going to talk about number 46 on the list, which is actually, I promise I did not plan this. I had, our friend had signed up for this movie, and I just calendar wise, she was going to record it after this conversation, but we're going to do Harold and Maude, which this movie actually references many times in it. And so, have you ever seen Harold and Maude?
I have not. Do I need to?
Well, I've seen it once a long time ago, and it is like basically a romantic story between like a young man and a much older lady. And so that's its whole concept. So I remember watching it and liking it. And also it reminded me a lot of like Wes Anderson films today. So it's been some time since I've seen it, so I'd like to revisit it. But I just thought it was funny in this, in Something About Mary, they both talk about, they connect over Harold and Maude. Yeah. So anyway, that'll be fun to discuss that movie. As always, check out moviesarealife.com for episode reviews and more. If you love this podcast, please take a moment to rate and review it. This really helps us with finding new listeners. Thanks again, Jeff, for doing this. I know we don't really talk movies a lot. I didn't think this would be the movie that we would spend almost an hour talking about, but there you go. So
there you go.
I don't know if we'll break this out of the next Thanksgiving or Christmas for everybody, but at least I know that we both really think this movie's funny. So,
there you go.
Yeah. Well, thanks for doing this, man.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.